Hello everyone, welcome to 10 for the Chairman. For those of you that haven't watched this before, this is where I take 10 questions that have been asked by our subscribers and answer them in as much detail as I possibly can. Our subscribers are the subset of the backers of Star Citizen that contribute additional money every month that essentially allows us to do a lot more of the sort of community feedback, content. So this show, Wingman's Hangar, and the Jump Point magazine and a bunch of other stuff that we're doing is really sort of supported by the subscribers, so thank all of you very much. And speaking of, I'm actually sort of looking at one of the things that we promised for the Imperator subscribers was having your name up at the office, and so we're sort of looking at the installation. So we're sort of considering a two-layered where all the names are on the front, and then on the back we sort of will backlight this and have it front mounted, and it'll be a big installation in front of a Star Citizen logo with all the names on the front with maybe some side lighting and stuff, but we're still working on it, but thought you'd be interested to see that in progress. So let's get to the questions, shall we? So I'll just put this off to my side. So the first question comes from me, not me, but ME, who asks, what is your opinion on being able to make real-world money from playing online games? Would you consider such a system in Star Citizen? So that's a good question. I mean, I actually was thinking about this a lot at the beginning. I actually thought it would be really cool that you could be playing this game and making some real world money from actually toiling away virtually. But right now we don't have any plans for that. There are some sort of legal issues to be dealt with, and then also I had some concerns about whether that would potentially sort of bring something into the game that may make it less for fun and be problematic. So right now we don't have any plans. May assess it in the future, but I kind of would really like to see how the persistent universe plays, how everything works, how people interact with each other before making a decision like that, because I think that potentially could be fairly unbalancing. I know that there was issues on Diablo with their sort of real money auction house. So interested intellectually, but not necessarily convinced I want to put it in the game just yet. So that will be a put a pin in it one. Okay, on to the next question. Radar asks, the Hornet is a purebred dogfighter and a nice design, but it also has a feeling of being the F-18 of the UEE. Will we see different designs of purebred dogfighters in SC, or will it remain more along the lines of Hornet versus Vandal fighter? No, I think we're definitely going to see some other dogfight designs. We're definitely going to have another UEE fighter craft. We're still sort of in the process of planning that out. We obviously have a couple of sort of military spec bombers that we've talked about. One is the Gladiator, the other is the Retaliator, and right now we only have one dogfighter, and obviously it's kind of a multi-role fighter, which is really what an F-18 is. And I think you would probably have more sort of a space superiority fighter, and maybe even a sort of lighter design than the Hornet. So yes, there will be more, and stay tuned. That will be something we'll be fleshing out for Squadron 42. Okay, MK asks, if I've purchased more than one package, each including a hangar, business, and deluxe, and also purchased an asteroid hangar, will that translate into at least 2 hangars when the Persistent University comes out? That's kind of a good question. We were sort of thinking that you would have one home base hangar, and then if you wanted to sort of had like places that you would go and sort of have sort of forward bases or whatever, that would be, you would be sort of renting hangar space on a planet or whatever. So I don't know, because currently the design would say no to that, although there could be an argument to say, well, I've got multiple packages, each one should have a hangar, and therefore I should be able to place them in different places. But really the concept of the hangar was we were just giving you a free place to have all your stuff. It wasn't that you would like be buying multiple houses around the universe. So I would say I don't know whether the 2 hangars. I mean, it's a difficult question to ask on the asteroid hangar, because that's a very distinct thing, and it's sort of more on a different location than, say, a business or a deluxe hangar. So I guess my question would be, not my question, but my answer would be, haven't made the decision on that yet, but that is a good point. So I will take that off and be thinking about like how to make that equitable without having someone buying 20 packages and just basically like snaffling up a bunch of real estate that they can put all around the universe, because that sort of would defeat part of the purpose of like getting people to play, because actually being able to get a hangar and all the rest of the stuff should take some work to achieve, and I don't want everyone to suddenly like be 100% fully set up. But it's a good question, so I will think about that. So I don't have a good answer for you right now, but you brought it up, so that's already a victory. Okay, next question comes from Brendan101. Will the dogfighting module be released in sections depending on the ships that can be used, and if so, will I have to wait until my ship, the Aurora LN, is playable? Okay, so the dogfighting module itself is going to be staged in various releases. The first dogfighting release is going to focus on the single-seater ships, so the multi-crewed ships won't be in the very first release of the dogfighting. That will be a later release, mainly because there's a whole extra level of sort of network complexity with multiple people running around a ship, and we've got to simulate the physics separately, and that's all stuff that's in development that we're working on right now, but won't be ready for prime time by the time release. So our focus for Dogfighting 1 is the single-seater ships, which would be primarily our test case is the Hornet, but also the Aurora, the 300i, the Cutlass, and the Aurora, and the Avenger would all be sort of the ships that we would be sort of focusing to try and have out ready for Dogfight V1. Not all of them are going to make it, just because there's a huge amount of assets that have to be built in terms of, yes, you have them in the hangars right now, but you don't have all the damage states and all those bits. And we are working on those, so we actually have like quite a lot of people working on all the parts, but our approach is on the dogfighting module that when V1 is ready to go, we're not going to hold it up because we don't have every single one of those ships, but as soon as they're ready, they'll get patched in. So likelihood is the Aurora is probably going to be there for dogfighting V1, as will the Hornet, and hopefully the 300i, because those are the three most common single-seater dogfighting ones, and then the other ones will be more about will they make it in time, or if not, they'll come in a few weeks later or whatever. So hopefully that answers the question. I think if you've got an Aurora, you're probably in luck, so to speak. So Siora Alpine Wolf asks, with the organizations being a huge hit with the community, I was wondering if organizations will have the ability to be more than just a shell that encompasses a group of players under the same banner. Will they have the ability to perhaps build a base from which they can produce items such as ammunition, which could mean that a refinery will be needed to extract relevant materials from resources, or collect from salvage or mining? So yes, that is actually the goal of organizations, they're not just meant to be a sort of friends list. Organizations ultimately will be able to tax or tithe their members, sort of have common assets. So like everyone can put money in, the organization could buy some ships, or the organization could buy some real estate. Ultimately, that would be sort of an organization potentially could be controlling an economic node. An economic node is what we talk about being, a factory producing weapons, or a mining operation, mining materials and stuff. And so, one of the goals of the organization system is to allow sort of groups of people to work together to maybe achieve objectives that a single person won't necessarily be able to do by themselves, which would be, control a big mining operation or something like that. So I hope that answers your question. Next question comes from Commissar, and he asks, when player organizations enter into direct conflict, how will NPC organizations such as the UEE respond? Will there be a need for a declaration of war such that the UEE recognizes the conflict and does not interfere? That is a good question again. I mean, I don't really think that the organizations necessarily have to declare war against each other, because they're essentially sort of private corporations or groups of people or guilds, and there's always conflicts between them. Now, of course, depending on what happens or where the battles happen, the UEE may step in. So, two organizations cannot go toe-to-toe out in the orbital space of Earth, because the UAE is going to say, conflict is not allowed in this safe area. Whereas you could probably be fighting, in the outer edge of the galaxy, and then that would be fine because there isn't any sort of UAE role. So I kind of see that like organizations fighting against each other will mostly be fighting over areas of resources that are sort of on the fringe of sort of the UAE controlled space. And then there will be some sort of clandestine activity happening inside UAE space, but there won't be all-out war like right in the middle of UAE space, because that would be problematic. Just like if you had IBM and Apple had a bunch of mercenaries and started shooting each other in the streets for dominance in the tech industry. Probably, the United States of America would frown upon such actions. So it'll be along those lines. I mean, maybe we'll find a way to allow the organizations to bring conflict on a more limited stage into sort of more sort of UE controlled areas. But for me, I sort of feel like I'd like to see sort of competition via like industry and business, and then sort of more some like kind of backdoor stealthy kind of stuff that people are going after each other, and then all-out warfare is sort of on the edges of the galaxy. Okay, next question comes from Kazansky, who asks, is CIG taking steps in Star Citizen to make the game more Oculus Rift compatible than just making the headset work in game? Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to make the Oculus Rift work like for the Oculus Rift in the game. We're not just sort of like having the Oculus Rift be you look around and that's it. So the final implementation of the Oculus Rift will, first of all, the head of your avatar will be disconnected from the animations that you have. Typically, like if you were normally running around when we get into a ship, for instance, the head position is controlled by the animation of the character climbing into it. Whereas when Oculus Rift is running, the head position is going to be controlled and tracked by the actual head position tracked off the Oculus Rift. And then we're going to use the Oculus Rift to, like basically looking around, and wherever you're looking will sort of inform of things you can select and do stuff like that. So playing it with the Oculus Rift will be, I think, fairly intuitive. So we're definitely, it's not just going to be tacked on. It's going to be, there is some specific changes in the code to work best with Oculus Rift or other headsets similar to Oculus Rift. Okay, next question comes from Vidi, who asks, question about inertia. If a carrier crashes into a large object, will any ships it carries be thrown about the deck, especially ships that have been de-anchored and are on the flight deck about to launch? Yes, we are going to simulate. So basically, if a ship that has crew aboard or unattached items aboard gets like a big impact, explosion outside, someone crashes into it, what we will do is we will actually generate an impulse for these sort of unfastened or unattached objects inside. So, the ultimate goal is like you get a big hit on a bigger ship, multi-crewed ship, and the ship lurches like you see in Star Wars or Star Trek or something, and everybody sort of lurches on the deck, and so that's a big goal. So it should be pretty cool when we get it working. But that's actually one of the goals of the bigger ships and the cap ships and the multi-crew ships. Okay, next question comes from Hakase, who asks, I think it's Hakase, H-A-K-A-S-E, but Hakase maybe, I don't know. Question, what if someone failed to board my ship? Can I keep theirs as they are all dead trying to take mine? Or will that still be considered as stolen? I think it's a great question, and my instinct is that if someone tries to board your ship and capture yours and you kill them in the process, then yes, you are fully okay with having their ship and it will not be considered as stolen, whether you've got CCDs that prove that you're acting in self-defense or whatever, but I definitely think that should be a penalty. If you're trying to raid someone, you potentially could lose your ship if you die. So answer is yes there. All right, last question from Beer for the Beer God, so maybe appropriate for the last question. The retaliated pictures included a concept of the bomb bay loaded with a retractable beam gun. Later on, I heard that beam weapons wouldn't be included in the game because you're not a fan of them. Will there be beam weapons in Star Citizen? And if not, why don't you like them? No, I don't dislike beam weapons. I mean, I like the Star Wars sort of laser bolt stuff because that's generally, I sort of grew up seeing a lot of that in sci-fi. So obviously we have that in Star Citizen. But we're probably going to have some bigger beam weapons, not necessarily on a fighter craft, but on a big capital ship stuff. We've been talking about having that maybe on a spinal mount or maybe a really big ship-to-ship turret stuff. So we'll definitely have some beam weapons, but they'll be more for sort of slow-moving, like whether it's cutting into a hull or something like that. But it won't be a sort of fighter-based. That'll be more sort of the traditional Star Wars side. All right. Okay, so that's the end of this episode where I answered the 10 questions. Again, thank you for listening, and thank you to the subscribers out there for subscribing, and thank you to all the backers out there for backing Star Citizen and enabling us to make this incredibly ambitious, but what I think is going to be like a super awesome and fun experience. So thank you all, and I will catch you next week.